All right, making the long and exhausting drive back to civilization. Some of you might know I live in the middle of nowhere. There is nothing out here because people get in the way, and I'm not a big fan of traffic, and I'm not a big fan of having to slow my space. But in general, people get in the way, and I didn't want to talk about stuff like this so early on in the sessions. But I got a phone call yesterday from somebody who worked for me they worked for me probably for about 6 years. One of the most talented folks I've ever worked with, enterprise architect, did a lot of consulting work with them. The interesting thing about this character is, and you know, they'll know who they are, but nobody else will, is their deliverables, what they were able to produce, top-notch stuff, accolades, raves. Having said that, they themselves weren't really great about selling ideas. Never really good at selling an idea. They could produce the materials to sell the idea. They could put them in the right format. They were received well, but they themselves not a salesperson. And having said that, one of the most important skills, which I'm going to talk about in some other episodes, is the ability for an IT person to get their point across. One of the things that is massively lacking in technology training is the ability for an individual to just explain their idea in business context. And individuals who are incredibly brilliant and know exactly what to do and can implement systems, get them into production, create flawless stuff, they don't know how to tell the story around how they do that. And that means that a lot of times they're on the wrong side of decisions that are political or financial or whatever, because they can't tell the story. That is not the point of this whole segment. The real point of this segment is this guy calls me up, and now that I'm gone and there's nobody insulating them and pushing the idea forward, he's losing political battle after political battle after political battle. And the frustration is getting to a point where, you know, he's calling me for assistance. And it's never a place that any of us want to be. And I can guarantee you, if you've worked in even a medium-sized or even small companies, you have run up against this time and time again. You are an IT practitioner. You know exactly what's going on with the code. You know what needs to go into production. You know all of the problems with all of the nonsense that other people are pushing. You know why the thing won't work. You can actually prove why the thing won't work if you were given half a chance to do so. But you're never going to get that opportunity because you are on the wrong side of the politics of the day. And you know, another group is doing something, another individual is doing something, they're pushing in a different agenda or a different capability, they've got funding, the management is you know, on another manager's side, you're kind of lost in the shuffle, and it's hard, and you really start to get frustrated, and you start to lose your mind. So this guy called, and you're often losing your mind and working very hard against individuals that, you know, they're not nearly as skilled as you. They don't know what's going on. They were sold something by somebody. They were told a tale by somebody. They have a political agenda, whatever the heck it happens to be. And there are a million reasons why people do messed up stuff. Sometimes they're just ignorant. But regardless of what the reason is, this guy called me up and he goes, I'm not getting it. And he explained the problem to me. He seemed to have a good solution, and he usually does. So he's very frustrated because time and time again, now that he doesn't have anybody to insulate him against the politics and the nonsense that are going on a daily basis, he's losing these battles against people who don't know what they're doing. They don't have the appropriate technical background to be making the assessments that they're making or the statements that they're making. And he's sitting here frustrated as hell going, I don't understand how these people are getting ahead. I don't understand how these individuals have so much influence when at the end of the day, they don't have a successful track record of doing stuff. They have made mistakes in the past. They're making mistakes currently, and they're somehow out. I don't want to use the word debate, but they're outselling an idea, and they're getting a lot of capabilities behind them. And I told them, and this is something that I think everybody should know, because a lot of people are like, oh my God, how is this person who doesn't know what they're doing, doesn't know what they're talking about, like how are they winning? How are they winning every single time? I mean, even in Office Space, if you've watched the movie Office Space, if you haven't watched the movie Office Space, stop watching me. Like, you don't know what's going on in the world if you haven't watched that thing. But if you've watched the movie Office Space, there's a scene where they're all talking about how to launder money, and during the money laundering scene, they're like, how can idiots and morons that work in the mafia or thugs basically like be so good at crime, and they're not good at it, like they're smart guys and stuff like that, and it's kind of a funny scene. But the point being is, like, this is what's going on here. If you think about this for a minute, you spent how much of your life figuring out how to program a system? You figured out how many different languages. Not only did you spend the 10,000 hours, you spent the 20,000 hours. I know what it's like to be a programmer. You get excited when you're in a project. You get excited about something. You get really excited about it, and you'll be there for like 2 or 3 days. Your skin's growing like a light green. You got Jolt Cola all over the floor. I guess Red Bull or Rockstar now, all over the floor around your desk. You've been up for days trying to solve a problem, and you're frustrated and jazzed at the same time. And you spent all of your time doing that. And the reason why you became a Rockstar programmer and all the stuff that is because of how much effort you put into that thing. And you can crush anybody. The problem is individuals that play politics, individuals that understand how to sell, individuals who know how to tell a story, individuals who know all of this stuff or are winning at all of this stuff. They spent as much time, or a decent amount of time, a heck of a lot more time than you ever did, figuring out how to play politics. They figured out how to tell a story. They figured out how to get buy-in. They figured out how to say the right things to executive management, or speak at the right level so that they weren't annoying, which is really hard for IT folks to do. They figured all of this stuff out, and they spent as many hours figuring out how to do that as you did becoming an awesome programmer. So when you're looking at somebody and you're like, how is this moron, this person who's low IQ or moderate IQ, or they just don't know anything, how are they consistently just crushing me politically, or they're getting so much influence and they're not even making sense half of the time? How are they winning? It has to do with that capability. That individual spent a lot of time figuring out how to have those discussions and schmoozing up to people and taking people to lunch and going to golf with people and stuff like that. And you are losing because they are as good at that stuff, which is around influence, money, making sure that they're heard and their message gets across, as you are at programming. And you don't understand that when you leave the keyboard and you go and you ask for the funds, and you go in and you ask for the power, and you go in for ask for the position, and if there's somebody competing with you internally, externally, wherever it is, for that money, for that budget, for that clout, and they've spent their career working at how do I politic at the table, and how do I kiss up to people, and how do I do all of that stuff, and you're suddenly leaving the keyboard, which is your realm of ownership, and you're going into their world, which is all negotiations and conversations and stuff like that, you are going to lose every time. It does not matter if they're a moron. They've put in the time. They've become good at it, just like you became good at being an awesome programmer. So you've got to understand, don't judge individuals just by what you perceive their intellect to be or anything else. You got to realize that these people are coming and they have capabilities far beyond yours just because they've been practicing, they've been studying, they've been paying attention, and they've been putting in their work too. It might not be work that you respect. It might be work that actually hurts your company. I've seen IT people who they get accolades all the time, and it's because they know how to talk and they know how to speak within their firms, and they don't have a clue what they're doing. They do a lot of damage to their companies, but they spent the time to figure out how to have that influence, how to have that power, how to have that control. So if you're getting frustrated and you're at your job and you're sitting there going, I don't understand how these individuals that don't even know what they're talking about half the time, how they are winning again and again and again. Start to understand and value and appreciate the effort that they put in to being able to have the discussions, to have the network, to relate with people, to get people on their side, because that's a skill that you didn't spend any time doing. You don't know how to do that. You are out of your comfort zone, and you are losing all of these times, and you're not getting the budgets, and you're not getting the clout, and you're not getting the position. You're losing to other people because that requires a different set of skills that don't come from you sitting on the keyboard and wearing out the pads of your fingers. So once you realize that, number one, you stop beating yourself up a little bit, because you're like, how can I be losing to this person? This person knows how to run the race better than you do. You're running a different race. It's not about the smartest guy wins. It's often about who's the most experienced with the course that you're on. That's the person who wins. You know, the person who you can have two golfers. One can be, not significantly better, but one can be marginally better than the other one. But if the other one knows the course, this is a dog leg left, this is a dog leg right, they're gonna do better, because they know where to hit the ball, because they know what they're approaching the green at, what angles and the hills and where the traps are. And if the better golfer does not know the course, they're going to screw up a couple of times simply because they don't know the course. So when you're playing on another course, start to value people. The other thing is, start to figure out how to tell a story. Like, as an IT person, the only reason why I was able to get to where I was able to get to in my career was because I was fortunate enough that I grew up in an environment where I figured out and learned and had to be able to tell a story. And I don't attribute my career path. I mean, like, yeah, look, I was a good programmer back in the day, and I was able to get a lot of stuff done and push a lot of stuff to production. And yeah, that got me ahead, and that got me a lot of promotions and a lot of accolades. But like, you hit a wall. You get 4 or 5 promotions, you become a principal engineer. You're on the top of the food chain. You're not in management yet. You're not really going anywhere, and you're not going to get there until you can have a plan, influence people, be able to manage a bunch of other folks. And those are not the same skills that got you into the programming thing. So anyway, I wanted to go on that. I did this because I got the reach out from somebody who I genuinely feel bad for, because they deserve better, because they're one of the best in the market that I've actually worked with. But sorry, dude, you are not capable of selling pretty much anything. You don't know how to tell a story. And the times that I've sat down with you and talked about, like, hey, if you don't know how to do this, you're going to continue to lose. When you lose the people who are on top of you that were the ones that sandpapered over all of the little bumps and bruises that you had to make the wall that you're selling smooth. When they're gone and you're on your own, like, this is when this stuff is all coming out. So please, for those out there who are continuing to have problems like my buddy's having, understand that you got to learn how to tell a story.